think these were extremely tough acts for me to follow, and I'm not sure what I can add on top of that. What really sticks in my head is when you're saying, be hungry. And if I had one word to maybe describe myself, I think that might be it. I started my first job was probably when I was 13. A friend's mother worked at, back then I think it was called First Bankers, and she needed somebody on the weekends to go in and help shred and film microfiche and all of this crazy stuff. So at 13 I did that like under the table, but it gave me a sense of accomplishment. At 15 I actually started working at Winn-Dixie as a cashier, so of course cash handling. It wasn't enough, like I was always driven to do something more. I was a cashier, I worked their stock crew, I worked frozen foods, I worked produce. I eventually became bookkeeper or assistant bookkeeper, and was that for many years until I just, again, kind of wanted more. And I heard of a bookkeeping job that opened up at Walgreens. They wanted a head bookkeeper. So I went to work for Walgreens and trained for that position, which I didn't know when I was taking the position that there was no bookkeeper in the store and hadn't been for probably a couple of months. So they were borrowing one to kind of keep their books. So I kind of walked into a little bit of a mess, but took the challenge on, went and learned at another store what needed to be done, went back to my store, took care of it. And after working there for so long, a credit union job became available. And I'm like, okay, you know, I saw room for advancement, somewhere I could move up, learn new things. So I, you know, interviewed for the job, got the job. It was actually at what was back then called Florida Transportation Credit Union, which, if any of you know, now that's Connect. So I accepted the position. I went back to Walgreens and said, you know, I took another position. You need to find a new bookkeeper. And they're like, okay, well, you know, you need to stay on to train someone new. Okay, not a problem. I'll do that. You know, I work at the credit union 5 days, you know, during the day, went back and helped train a bookkeeper at night. When that person was up to speed, I'm like, okay, now I'm giving my notice again. I'm gonna go work at the credit union. Well, we really need somebody in pharmacy. I'm like, okay, so, you know, I went and helped in pharmacy at night, worked at the credit union 5 days. Finally said, okay, enough of that. So then they're like, well, we really need somebody on the stock crew. So I helped on the stock crew.
Wow.
It didn't end there. So about that time, you know, it's like I had an opportunity to go work. My mother actually worked at the racetrack in a concession stand, and I knew that they needed help at nights at the racetrack, and I'm like, okay, well, how do I fit this in? So I kind of held that off for a little bit, and I gave my notice again to Walgreens, and I'm like, no. They're like, we really need help now in the liquor store. I'm like, all right. So I went and helped out in the liquor store for a while. And
by that point, I'd be drinking the liquor.
I mean, it's like, so I've always been one that, you know what, I don't care what the challenge is, just I'll take it. You know, I'll learn something new. So I finally was able to turn in my resignation and actually leave Walgreens. So again, five days a week at the credit union, and then I started the night job at the racetrack. Well, the racetrack was operating 6 nights a week, so I would work 6 nights a week.
Oh my God.
6 nights a week, 5 days, and it was great. Like, it wasn't because I needed the money. I went to work at the track because they needed help. And at that point, you know, I was young, had lots of energy, nothing could really slow me down. So went to work at the racetrack 6 nights. And then at the credit union during the day, there was one of the members that would come in. He was actually an appraiser. And every time he would come in, and I'm like, Donald, you know, you have 6 NSFs. You know, this is crazy. And this went on for quite some time. And he's finally like, you know, I just need you to keep my books for me. So I ended up keeping his books, and I did that on the weekends. I didn't handle cash or anything like that. It was strictly bookkeeping for him. But it alleviated him from having NSFs going forward. So I thought, you know, I'm doing really a good thing. about the same time, there was a horse trainer at the track who taught cost accounting classes at the big telephone companies in New York, like New York Bell, those back in the day. And he needed somebody to type up all of his materials for his training books. Okay, sign me up. So I would do that. And then there was another trainer who also needed his books like maintained and that type of thing. So I took that on. So at one point, not that I needed the money, but I, at that point I didn't really have a whole lot of debt, but I had 5 jobs at once. And it's like, you have to really know your limits. And at that point, I was fine. I could handle it all, 6 nights, 5 days, and then the part-time jobs like kind of in between, until I was falling asleep behind the wheel about 3 out of 4 times. And I'm like, you know what? That's my limit. So I had to pick. I actually kept the racetrack, I kept the credit union, and I cut out the other odd jobs just so that those times in between when I would be working on those 3 extra jobs, now I could maybe take a little quick power nap instead. Because, I think that's one of like the biggest things. You really have to know your own limits. You have to know when something's not feeling right, your attitude, maybe if you're getting short with someone, you have to know who you can turn to for help. There's always somebody that, even though they come and say, yeah, I'm doing great, I'm peachy today, there's people that that you can turn to, because some of those individuals, they aren't necessarily peachy, but having them to lean on, and maybe them even understanding that they're not alone, that you're feeling some of those kind of same things, it really helps. So I worked at that credit union for 7 years, and then I had, at that credit union, I was hired actually just as a receptionist, just take care of phones. And in no time I ended up being a backup teller, and then it was doing loan closings. I was backup for collections, I was backup for accounting, and it got to where I just got like a small raise each year, and that was it. And there was only 10 positions in the credit union, so there wasn't really a whole lot of room for advancement. So I'm like, there has to be something else out there. And that's when I actually had gone to what used to be Postal and Professional Credit Union. There was a conference there during the day, in the middle of the day, kind of like this. And my previous supervisor that had worked with me at Florida Transportation was now a supervisor at Postal and Professional. And she's like, well, let me just introduce you to the CEO. So I went and met him and, said that I kind of want room for advancement. And it was something that he offered me at that credit union. So I went back to my credit union, pretty much gave my 2 weeks notice, and started at that credit union, and I have now been there 26 years. When I started there, I started as a loan processor, which was, everything was handwritten. You pulled out a credit report, you pulled it out, you hand wrote, the debt ratio, you calculated it all on a calculator. It was nothing in this fancy loan operating systems that we have today. And that's all I did from start to finish every day was loan processing. And let me tell you, that gets boring pretty fast. So especially when, you're used to taking on anything that is thrown at you, when you're like narrowed down to one thing. So it didn't take me long to, pass up loan processing and kind of go to loan closing. And then I wanted to learn loan underwriting. And I actually had a really great individual, Fernando Reyes, if anybody knows him. He was a great guy. He's passed. His son is Jace Reyes. But anyway, he taught me a lot in lending, a lot. And invaluable lessons that will always be with me. But it also gave me the opportunity to go even further, because I did loan underwriting, I became the loan manager, and then just kept moving up. By the way, I don't think I ever mentioned, did I mention my name? I am now president and CEO of Priority One, but I have been there for 26 years. I told you it was a hard act to follow, so already I messed it up. But I've been there 26 years, and I can tell you that this is my final destination. So I will retire from here as long as the board will continue to have me and the staff will continue to have me. I just, again, you have to know like your own limits, not be afraid to like reach out to somebody and talk to somebody else if you're having issues. There's such an amazing support group within credit unions.
Yeah.
I get emails, phone calls from other, credit unions all the time, CEOs or, others in positions at credit unions. Same thing, like when we have something at the credit union that we need, how do they do this? How do these, we email out, we call out. It is an amazing community that isn't afraid to like help each other. And like Amy said, I don't think you're gonna find like a Wells Fargo, Bank of America, any of those like sitting in the same room together, trying to come up with a plan or see how one does something. They're not sharing secrets, not at all.
That's strength.
Yep. That's really all I've really only known credit unions. Credit unions are my passion. And I'm not afraid to learn. And I learn new things every day. And I've learned actually just recently as far as balancing that work and home is, I think I have some still to learn there because, you have to have downtime. And we are all so guilty, I think, even going out to dinner and you're checking your emails on your phone and making sure that, if there's any work emails that you can respond to, you're trying to get back to them. On a weekend, I have 2 kids, they both are very heavy into baseball, so I spend, any vacations for many, many years were all baseball vacations. So we went to baseball destinations. It's taken us to Texas for 4 different summers. I've been to New York. My kids have played in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina multiple times. Any vacation is just baseball vacations, but that's what I loved. I loved being with them. And I was that mom that was always at, all of the practices because I didn't want somebody to tell me my kid had a really good practice. I wanted to be able to see it for myself. And then actually I was divorced in 2014, so even before that, I was doing everything. Even though, his day kind of at work ended at like 2 o'clock and then he would go back and race at night, but he could be at home and if one of my kids had to be at practice, my son's like, where are you? And I'm like, but your dad is there. He's like, but you always take me. I'm like, okay, if I'm doing it all on my own anyway, so it was a stressful time. But again, you just have to know who to turn to. When you need help, don't be afraid to ask for it because there's always somebody out there that can help. And even if not in your own credit union, the credit union family is pretty tight, so don't be afraid.
Thank you, Deana.
Thank you.